Let's discuss electoral reform. Now, we're joined by Neeshan Balton from the Kathrada Foundation. Now, they are on a nationwide campaign against the proposed Electoral Amendment Bill that is currently before Parliament. They join us to tell us why, rather. And Neeshan, thank you very much for your time this morning. Perhaps give us some clarity on the reasons that you have put forward around this bill and whether it should be put through by Parliament ahead of the 2024 elections. Where does your standing come from, or is based on, rather?
Our standing is firstly based on the fact that our constitution, as it currently stands, provides for an electoral system which was supposed to have been a temporary measure. And from 1996 onwards, Parliament should have done the work to have changed our electoral system. Parliament has, however, rejected almost 3 reports that have advocated for fundamental changes to the electoral system, and changes which would really make our public representatives more closer and more accountable to the voters in the first instance, without changing the overall intention of wanting a proportional representative system. The current bill before Parliament arises because of action that was taken by civil society organization to allow for Parliament to enable independent candidates to stand. What Parliament has in fact done, or the Portfolio Committee, has rejected the majority report of its own commission that it had set up, its own advisory committee, which essentially argued for a mixed system, very much like the local government system that we have in South Africa, for it to be used at national and provincial level. And what this really would have done would have been to introduce a system that South Africans currently understand, we use, and with a bit of modification could actually work much better in the interest of democracy. What they now have is a system that appears to enable independents to stand, but in reality doesn't do that at all. It requires a huge amount of effort just to qualify, to register, and then they will contest not individual areas, but entire provinces against established political parties. And that, in a sense, I think makes a mockery of the intention of the Constitutional Court to call on Parliament to change our electoral system into one that would enable independent candidates, and I suppose the broader electorate, to be able to participate in an electoral system that would be fair, that would allow for accountability, and in the end, I think just improves the quality of our democracy overall.
I mean, you've seen the news cycle over the last few days, and the ANC really against what is currently before Parliament in general. And one wonders 2 things here, in that there's a very little sense of a political will to democratize the election space in South Africa, as you've just described for us, but also the threats that, should this be done in the way that you are calling for, a civil society, there are very real chances that the ANC may no longer have the seat of government after the 2024 elections, hence that hesitancy. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think no party is preordained to govern. They have to get the support of voters on a regular basis. So we start off from the premise that elections and the right to vote is at the heart of our democracy, and it must have meaning. But when it lacks meaning, which results in 18 million people deciding not to take part in our elections, then we must set up and start to ask, why is this happening? Why are people opting out of our system of democracy? And what are they replacing it with? And it's on that basis that we think we've advocated for fundamental reform for the electoral system, We were very surprised and happy to hear at our annual lecture yesterday that the ANC is in broad support of what civil society organizations are calling for. And we will certainly be um, taking forward the opportunity for engagements with the minister, the portfolio committee, and the party itself to understand why they have differing positions in the portfolio committee in parliament and at a public platform yesterday. So we actually need to understand where do they actually stand on the issue of electoral reform, and they need to clarify this. We would, however, hope that what was reported yesterday is the real and genuine view of the ANC.
And then finally, do you think that all this engagement around electoral reform, the bill, making the changes that really allow for the true independence of candidates to go through and contest in the way that you have just described for us, do you think this could be done in the next 2 years, or are you doubtful just based on the back and forth and the unhappiness by civil society of the current form that it takes on?
You know, Vali Musa was saying at the lecture yesterday that he delivered that in 1993, in November 93, the decision was made on holding the elections in April 94. And that's where agreement was reached. And in the space of 5 months or less, the 94 elections were held. I think, you know, I know the difficulties of the IEC, and without wanting to minimize all of the complications that will arise from any such decision. For us, what is important is to have the decision made. How it gets implemented, where it gets implemented, is stuff that we would leave to the technical people and ultimately to the courts to help us decide on what is legally compliable, what is it that is legally permissible and not. But that has to be part of what would be what would arise from hopefully a discussion between civil society, the minister, the portfolio committee, and I suppose all other interested role players. We certainly don't want to stand in the way of an election. But that is not our call. That would be the call of Parliament if it adopts legislation that is not legally compliant with the constitution of this country. Then they would have to take responsibility for the consequences that comes from that. That's certainly not what we would like, but that would be ultimately where these decisions will be made.